Last year we launched our Facing It Together campaign, didn't we?
Yes.
Encouraging friends, family and loved ones to support those living with domestic abuse. Well, this week, the government's announced a whole raft of measures and around £1 billion to make life for victims and survivors better, including special rape and sexual investigation teams in every police force in England and Wales by 2029. New measures to tackle things like misogyny in schools and also protecting young people online. So will any of this make any difference whatsoever? Well, there's only one person that can really answer that. Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer.
Hello.
Welcome. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has.
Yes.
But a good day to be here.
Yeah.
To be launching this.
We've been waiting for you. I saw you at 10 Downing Street. I was like, what's going on? When are you coming down?
I said I'd come on.
Well, I think what
we
you
wanted to
actually
save
said
it
was
for a
that...
special day.
Well, I think
Right.
what you actually told her is that you're a little bit scared of
A little bit nervous.
a bit nervous. But it's fine, we don't bite, it's fine. Well, look, as you said, you're on the show here today to talk about something that's really important, and it is linked to our Facing It Together campaign. And I remember when you were releasing the manifesto, when you were planning to become, well, when you were hoping to become Prime Minister, you sort of said you want to halve the amount of violence against women and girls.
Yeah.
And you've made all these announcements this week. You know, we've got a lot of mums, sisters, daughters, nieces. We've got so many women who watch and engage in the show, so many women in the audience today. What you need to be able to convince us that any of these changes will make any difference whatsoever?
I think they will make a difference, and we must make a difference. Let me start by saying I really wanted to come on Loose Women to launch this strategy because of your campaigning on this, and because I know that we can only do this if we do it together.
Yes.
Now, halving violence against women and girls is really difficult. Let me say that up front. I've been working on this issue for the best part of 20 years.
Wow.
When we were doing it in criminal justice, we took measures. They moved the dial a bit, but halving it is really, really difficult.
Yeah, because the numbers are stark.
So what we've done, I won't go through all the measures, but we've got a whole load of measures which put in better protection if you've been subjected to violence of any sort, domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual violence. So much better support for victims and survivors. But the bit that's different in this strategy, which I think is likely to help us make the difference, is the preventative bit. In my world, when I was chief prosecutor, I was always dealing with what do we do after the event when someone has come forward and said something's happened to me, which is hard enough to do, by the way. Now we're also doing how do we look at prevention, particularly talking to teenagers.
So in schools,
In
basically.
school. So I was in a school yesterday looking at a pilot of what we're going to do. We had 11 and 12-year-olds as a group, and we had 17-year-olds. And they were going through some of the work we're going to be doing with them, looking at relationships and going through a conversation. What is a healthy relationship? What is an unhealthy relationship? They all had various words to put on the floor as to whether they thought it was healthy or unhealthy. And then they were being asked to pick out particular words of why they thought that was either healthy or unhealthy. It was really good. And I was...
Prime Minister, in the 20 years that you've been looking at violence against women, you will have seen the enormous increase, and particularly in sexual violence, particularly amongst younger and younger people. 41% of young girls talk about having experienced sexual violence in intimate relationships. And we know the culprit. You know, I mean, in Australia, they've just banned smartphones for 16-year-olds. And here in the UK, we know that it's online, the access to it, and also the complete lack of accountability for all of the big tech platforms. What can you actually do about what's causing it, rather than dealing with the problem once it's out in our society?
Yeah, firstly, I completely agree with you that one of the worrying trends is the age at which there's abuse is going down.
Younger.
And it was one of the most depressing pieces of research I ever read about 10 years ago, that the young women most likely to be subject to abuse were in the 16 to 19-year-old category, because I think most of us had probably assumed it was more likely to be in the sort of purely adult space.
But also sexual practices that are now treated as normal. Jess Phillips is talking about teaching her children about strangulation. I mean, when I was a teenager, I thought we were pretty, you know...
Yeah, but we've taken action on that. Social media's made it worse. It's not the cause of it, it's made it worse. It's been with us for a very, very long time. It's much more prevalent than people think, and still 9 out of 10 victims and survivors don't feel able to come forward, so we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
But when they come forward, they don't get... The prosecutions don't happen either.
Well, not enough of them, and
No.
not quickly enough, and I'm sick to death of stories of... well, the one I heard last week of a 14-year-old girl who had to wait 4 years for her case to come to court. Imagine waiting that long. Imagine a 14-year-old 4 years later being cross-examined about what happened to her. But just on social media, we do need to take measures, and we are. The Online Harms Act is in place. But we have to talk to teenagers and boys in particular. I think it's really difficult for teenage boys to navigate social media.
But you also have to deal with the tech platforms.
We do have to deal with the tech platforms. We need to look at what measures we can put in place, particularly things like nudification images being passed between teenagers. Again, you'll be really shocked at the high percentage of those. So we're taking measures there.
I've got 2 teenage daughters.
Yeah.
You talk about misogyny in schools and tackling that and preventative measures, which I wholly embrace. My question to you is, you know, when it comes to this kind of thing with misogyny, it doesn't always scream, it often whispers. How are you tackling it, or is there misogyny at Westminster?
Oh, there's undoubtedly misogyny at Westminster. I think it's everywhere. I doubt... In truth, there are many people across the country who don't know somebody who's been subject to abuse. It is really difficult.
Well, you know someone very close, you know, one of our closest allies, shall we say, recently used the language quiet piggy. Would you allow for someone to speak to your daughter, your wife, your colleagues, in the way that Trump spoke to a female journalist?
No, I wouldn't. I absolutely wouldn't.
And would you class that as misogyny, and would that be something you would be looking at?
I would call it out. But I would also say part of the stuff we're doing in teenagers is talking about behaviours they might not think are problematic, but in fact
that they learned online as being normalised.
They're learning from the top.
They're learning from the top, and one of my concerns is that if you're a 13 or 14-year-old... I mean, I feel this quite acutely because our children are 15 and 17, so this is...
A boy and a girl, isn't it?
A boy and a girl, yeah. Our boy's 17, our little girl's 15. It's very hard for a teenager to understand what is an appropriate relationship because they haven't got much to go on. They've got their home situation, unless it's at school, talking to teachers, talking to each other.
Yeah.
And one glimmer of hope yesterday, because people often say to me, how can you be optimistic about this? It's a big problem. The young people were quite confident in talking about what they saw were the problems, because I thought we had cameras in there. I'm coming along, you know, but they actually were quite confident in coming forward. Now, that will vary, but I was really pleased about that.
Because it's not as though schools have been sat there doing absolutely nothing about it.
No.
There are schools up and down the country that have been trying really hard in their own ways to try and reverse a trend that we see happening. And so is it fair, then, to just solely put it on schools? Do parents not have a responsibility to learn how to talk to their children about these things? And you talk about your kids at 15 and 17. When did you first start talking to them about things like sex, porn, coercion, control, all of that stuff?
Yeah, we have to talk to them about all the challenges that they face as teenagers. And but this responsibility is actually on all of us. It's on us as government, it's on families, on parents, on teachers, and not just a responsibility. We will only do this if everybody plays their part. That's why I honestly wanted to come on here because of your campaign, Face It Together. That is really important. The government can't do this alone. We need to reach in. There are lots of different things people... If you're a business, one of the initiatives I've seen, which is really good, is to have a little space, maybe over a coffee, where somebody who may have had something that's happened to them can go and talk in confidence. Because if you're a woman in an abusive, controlling relationship, it's very likely your perpetrator is going to be watching what you're doing, seeing if you're going to tell anyone, telling anyone in the family. Where's the quiet space where you might just start a conversation?
But that requires money, and you have said that there's almost £1 billion that's going to be put forward to this.
Yeah, just over.
£20 million is going to be for schools. But, you know, we do not have a magic money tree, so where are you planning on getting the money from?
We don't have a magic money tree. We've put quite a bit of money behind this, so £1.2 billion, so it's a significant... This is the biggest initiative on violence against women and girls. I'm leading it myself with Jess Phillips because... one of the reasons I actually went from law into politics is because I was frustrated on things like violence against women and girls, that within criminal justice, we couldn't do enough. We needed it to be broader. So we're putting the money in. There will always be the challenge of should you put more money in. I would say we put a lot in. I'd also say that for some of the stuff in schools, it's not that resource intensive. It's just a way of making sure it's happening in every school, that it's teachers. We had third-party, we had Tender, who are experts in the field with us yesterday, helping with this. That's not that expensive. I'm not saying it's nothing, but money is important, but it's not everything. Yeah. It's actually the cultural change.
When you say, I'm listening to you talking, there's a few words that you said, being alone, community and cultural change. And at the moment, obviously, this scheme is very important. But I've got to be honest with you, at the moment, from what I hear outside, whether being a woman, a single woman, a woman of colour, a woman from working class background, there's a really heavy despair in the community, in the UK right now. We are the United Kingdom, we've got child poverty at the top. We've got social workers with cases they cannot manage. We're calling ambulances, it's taken an hour, 10 minutes for them to come. And I feel like as a community, as a country, they feel disconnected from you. They don't know whether you understand what they're going through. People working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, they're tired, social services at the pack. How do you feel knowing that generational voters for Labour are starting to feel like they do not want to vote anymore? Well, how do you feel about that?
I want to take up that challenge because I'm acutely aware that the cost of living is the #1 issue for most families up and down the country. And therefore, it's really important, as we did in the budget, that we take measures to tackle the cost of living. So we're taking £150 off energy bills. That's on top of the £150 off energy bills for 6 million of the most vulnerable families. We made a major move on child poverty by lifting the cap on benefit. That will take 500,000 children out of poverty. That is why I came into politics. So I don't want a country where we have poverty on that level across our country.
But the ones who are sitting here right now, the ones who are watching this and feeling like their voice is not being heard, what would you say to them, Prime Minister? The ones who are desperate, they're on their edge, they don't know what they can do next to make a change in their life, and they're waiting on you as the leader of this country. What would you say to them?
I listen, I hear, and then I act. And you have listening. Everything I know about violence against women and girls has come because I listened. One of the first encounters I had was with John and Penny Clough. Their daughter, Jane, was murdered by her ex-partner who'd also raped her. They wanted to come and see me to tell me what an awful experience they had in the prosecution service that I ran. So I said, of course I'll see you. They came down and I shut up. I said, I'm not going to talk. You just talk to me all the way through everything that's happened to you. At the end of the meeting, I said, we're going to do this together. We're going to change this together. The same on the cost of living, same on child poverty. Listening in a way it's just taking in what people feel, which is really important.
Youth violence. People, you've got a 17 and 15-year-old, people are frightened for their kids to go out. This is where we're at.
And we need to tackle knife crime in particular for young people who are very vulnerable and scared themselves about it.
You had a letter today from, I think, 39 MPs about this change to courts and to non-jury trials. I wonder how much you think that's going to help women, because over 50% of judges are white, over 50-year-old men, and they're going to be sitting on cases, particularly of lesser sexual violence and so on. So the whole legal system, as we already know, as you know very well, is broken when it comes to seeing perpetrators brought to justice. And this is just going to make it worse. Women won't have a voice.
Well, the way I come at this is at the moment, we've got a broken criminal justice system. The last government left it in a complete mess. And after working in it for so many years, it breaks my heart they did that.
But how long will it take to bring your promises to fruition?
One of the reasons we're doing what we're doing on juries is I'm not prepared to tolerate those that have been subject to serious sexual violence waiting 3 or 4 years to come. I've looked survivors in the eye.
But the system is a 50-year-old and above white men sitting in judgment over women who've experienced, you know, those sorts of cases. Listen, I just want to know, what's the worst day you've had so far? Because there must be a lot to choose from.
And you better not say loose women. Yeah.
Look, there's been plenty of challenges. I'll tell you the very worst, and it was... actually, it was the day of the election, and it nearly broke my heart, because we had 10 o'clock of the day of election. We had the exit poll, which comes about a minute afterwards. and it said, Labour's got a landslide victory. I was with my team and my family. I jumped up and punched the air, as I would if Arsenal had just scored a fantastic goal. And my little girl, then 13, burst into tears and was inconsolable. And that, it ripped through me. I had these two emotions totally through my body. And,
I think that's what people want to know. If you've
want
got
to
a
know
heart.
if you're a
They want to know
family
that
man.
you've got a heart.
Yeah.
because
No, they want to know. They want to know. Well, look, they want to